Welcome back, everybody. I'm Mike Montague, Director of Community Engagement here at Sandler, and it's another How to Succeed podcast. This week, we're talking about how to succeed at revisiting pain throughout your sales process. And my guest this week is a longtime Sandler client, Wes Alkin from Dext. He has done several rounds with Sandler over different companies, but we're going to talk about why he finds revisiting pain so important in your sales process. The Sandler podcast is copyrighted by Sandler Systems, LLC, and protected by U.S. copyright laws. For more information on Sandler, go to sandler.com. We're the world's largest and maybe longest running, too, at this point, sales training organization. Been doing it for over 50 years, and we're already getting shout-outs here from Bogota, Colombia. Thank you for watching, and Atlanta, Georgia, checking in. India checking in. So a very popular one. If you want to join the conversation, you can go to our YouTube channel. You can go to LinkedIn. You can go to Facebook. We are broadcasting these live. And as always, if you haven't checked them out before, you can subscribe to them on YouTube or any podcast feed as well. All right. Welcome, Wes. We are talking about how to succeed at revisiting pain. How did this concept come up for you in Sandler, and why did you pick it as one of your favorites?
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Appreciate it. One of the things I've noticed, so I've been through Sandler training a number of times, a few times as an individual contributor, a few times as a leader. And one of the things was it takes a little bit of time for the penny to drop when it comes to understanding the pain. And I noticed this. And for me, it did. But when the penny dropped, I got it. And then as a leader, I was like, we went through the training and the techniques they were using seemed to be working, but something was missing. So ultimately, when I looked at it, I was like, okay, it was a great training session, great content. They were engaged. Why didn't the penny drop on understanding pain? And I then remembered something that I became very familiar with, and that is the forgetting curve. This was by Herman Ebbinghaus back in the 1880s. And the concept of the forgetting curve is 90% of information will be forgotten within 30 days if it's not put into practice or reinforced. So what was happening here was ultimately we were falling victim to the forgetting curve. It also brought me back this gap to something that I'd experienced as an athlete. I'll touch on my athletic background and whatever, but I was fortunate as an athlete to be exposed to a lot of really great athletes. And what made them great is they are goal-orientated and focus on the fundamentals and revisit the fundamentals continuously. And I noticed that this was not part of our program per se. We finished the Sandler training and we'd get into the new techniques. We'd do reversals, strip lines, things like this, really exciting stuff. But we were missing the fundamental. So we then parked and took a step back and said, you know what? Let's go back. Let's see where people sit in regards to understanding what we're trying to do here. And that is ultimately what brought me to kind of this aha moment where it's like, okay, we need to go back and really spend time on the pain funnel, understand it, understand what we're trying to do. And this led me to kind of the approach we now take.
Well, I love all of that in that story. It really kind of goes back to David Sandler's original thoughts around the power of reinforcement, and that, you know, you have to do this stuff over and over again to get it. Sometimes you get it for a while and then you forget it, or sometimes you go, oh, that's a really great idea, and then you never put it into play. And sometimes it just takes a couple of different repetitions or personalities. One of the reasons I love doing this podcast is that sometimes another trainer from a different part of the world says the exact same concept in a different way. And then, like you said, that penny drops, you become aware of it and you go, oh, I get it. And I also love this topic that you're mentioning, is that we're talking about revisiting pain throughout your training process and really driving this home with your sales team today. But it's also a good one for your prospects and buyers, that just because they admitted that your solution would help them, or that they have a problem that you can solve, or that they're in pain right now, doesn't mean that that pain lasts forever, that they're going to forget about those things too, that they'll start living with that pain and they'll adjust their comfort zone accordingly, and all of a sudden you've lost a deal because you didn't revisit pain and you didn't bring that up later in the process. And anytime we get to kind of kill two birds with one stone, it's a horrible phrase, but you find those synergies in these lessons. I find it really interesting. So let's start with attitude here. And when you're talking about driving a Sandler team and trying to get your sales team, you're the head of sales there at Dex. When you're thinking about how to get them into understanding the concept of pain, where do you start, and what's the ideal attitude for introducing this to them?
Yeah, it goes all the way through the bat. And basically, when I look at it, I want them to recognize they are to take a doctor's approach. I want them to understand they're the doctor, the buyer is the patient, the sales order is the prescription, and the implementation is the pharmacy. And I want them to take this approach. And again, it was something that got introduced to me, and it really helped me visualize it. And then I was like, okay, did some research on this. And sure enough, when we talk about the pain funnel, doctors have their version of it, which is called cold spa. And when you start looking at cold spa and you look at their other structures for doing this, it's the exact same thing. Think of it this way. And I tell the sales team, think of it this way. When was the last time you walked into a doctor's office and you said, hey, here's what I need? And maybe some people will do that, but no doctor is really going to say, okay, yeah, that's great. Here's the prescription. Good luck. They're going to say, well, before that sounds interesting, but before we do this, help me understand what's going on here. They're going to go through and understand the symptoms, but they're not going to prescribe off the symptoms. They're then going to get to the root cause, which is L2. They get to the root cause, understanding what is creating these symptoms. And if you discover 5 symptoms, you might only find out 4 of them are tied to the root cause. That's good. And then from there, let's say you've now prescribed them horrible medicine that they don't want to take. This is where L3 comes in. What's the impact? Well, if you don't take this medicine, it's going to get worse. It's going to become very, very bad. And this is where I think most people understand the L1, L2, and L3. But where I noticed people were forgetting was the types of pain, where it is basically pain now, pain in the future, gain now, gain in the future. So I have the team listening for this. And what I've told them is when they hear gain in the future and they get to L3, stop and go all the way back to the beginning. The gain in the future is the weakest of them all, and it's going to have the lowest closing percentage. Even if you do a great discovery and you get to L3 of them, it's going to have the weakest closing percentage. And you're right now worth slowing it down and getting back to the beginning and be like, okay, so I understand that's what you want to do in the future. However, help me understand what hurdles are in your way right now to get in there that we can overcome. So again, this is very much the doctor mindset I want them to have. I want them to become a trusted advisor where the person trusts them, they learn from them, and because we prescribe them the correct thing and they go to the pharmacist and have a good experience and get better, they will then come back to us if they have more pain, and they'll trust us more and more.
Yeah, no, I think you nailed that for the salespeople listening, and how we start the pain and dive deep on the pain funnel with our clients. I'm wondering what you would say about your ideal attitude as either the head of sales here, somebody directing training and on why pain is important, or for the training process itself. How do you prepare your sellers? I think a lot of times when we do sales training, I've been doing it for 12 years now. Whenever I say that to somebody who doesn't know what I actually do, they go, "Oh, I know a terrible salesperson you should talk to because they need some training." And that's not really what we do. Like you're talking about, we work with really highly paid professionals that are the doctors of their craft. They know what they're doing and help them take their game to the next level. How do you position the attitude of going to sales training to not as a punishment, but as something that we should look forward to? We're all going to revisit this. I'm going to sit through this class with you as the leader because this is an important concept and we all need to stay fresh with it. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, there's a couple of parts to it. One, first of all, how I get them to lean into the understanding of the pain, because one of the pain funnel is there's a bit of pushback you get. It's like, I don't want to create pain for people. We're not creating pain. We're solving it. We're uncovering what they already have. But to get them to buy into this, I really use the cookbook a lot. So the Sandler cookbook approach. And what we do is we do a goal setting exercise. We walk them through their goals and with their comp plan and figure out, okay, you have these 3 goals. Here's an estimate of how much these goals take. Here's your comp plan. Here's what your quota is. And sure enough, what you find out is getting to their goals is usually higher than what their quota is. So now you've got a person bought in emotionally to what you're about to present to them. And from there, now we can get them to lean in. If I don't know what their goals are, it's very hard to coach.
Love that. Okay. Yeah, you absolutely nailed it. Doing it for their reasons, I think makes them pay more attention, and you don't get hostages in the training room and stuff.
It's way more fun. It's way more fun. And when they hit the goals, it's great. I've had people say, again, younger individuals say, hey, I just paid off my student loan. That thing's amazing. Paid off their entire student loan. Some of their goals, there isn't a big monetary amount tied to it, but there's a commitment. So when I was, so I lead SDRs and AEs at Dext for North America. And with the SDRs, I just passed my driver's test. Okay. Again, not a massive monetary thing, but what type of car do you want to drive next? And stuff like that. And then we can go there. And these are really great things that get well beyond just talking about quota and stuff like that. It brings it back to these activities will lead you to your goals.
Now, let's move to behavior here a little bit, and let's talk about how we actually do this. So again, we're kind of maybe talking on 2 or 3 different levels here. I'll let you pick where you start. There's the behavior of how often we reinforce this concept of finding pain with our team, and then how often are they actually doing these behaviors? Are you checking in with them in these calls? Let's start with the training process and kind of how you hold people accountable with finding pain. What does that look like in your world?
So I've worked with some great Sandler trainers. I let them train and do the teaching of the concept. How I reinforce it is basically it becomes part of our conversation. It becomes part of our language. So when we do forecasting, there's a column dedicated to levels of pain that we've uncovered. When I do video coaching as well, where we'll watch a Zoom together, a recorded Zoom together, and I'll highlight to them, here's where you could have got to L2 or L3. Oh, you did great getting there. Pain in the future. And help them understand pain in the future. Or sorry, gain in the future. Sorry, pain in the future is great. I like that one almost as much as I like pain in the present. But gain in the future, I want them to understand because again, I've been victim of this a lot where I did the pain funnel. I was like, yes, I got it. Got L3. And when I step back and look at it historically, it was gain in the future. And that explained to me why I chased that deal for around. That explained to me why we didn't get the result that we expected and stuff of the nature. So these are things that I'm doing on a regular occurrence. So once a week, we do with the team, we watch videos with them and we go through this. This was actually a concept kicked off by an individual who's doing sales enablement with us, and that is Nana at our company. And she led this charge, and it was a great eye opener. And ultimately, now this is part of our DNA. We once a week we sit there and we're coaching on this. And that's where I'm really focused on with the team, because the rest of the techniques in Sandler fall short unless you master this part. And I've seen it enough times where you get somebody in and like they lean in and they're doing it. And then they move on to the next technique and they get more excited about the advanced ones, but they never mastered understanding how to uncover pain.
If you got a motivated buyer, your life as a seller is a lot easier, just in general for everything, right? So I'm wondering about your sales process. One of the things that I love asking clients about and showcasing this for other people is that sales methodology and the idea of finding pain could be done in a lot of different ways depending on what you're selling. You're selling a software service and tech, it's B2B. And so what does this look like? Is it a basic first discovery call session? Are you revisiting it along the way? Where does pain play a role in your sales process, which is different as a B2B software?
So start with rapport, upfront contract. In the upfront contract, we may just plant some signposts or signals to where we're about to go. Then we move into discovery. And what the discovery is basically going through and listening as we ask the questions. You don't have to ask every question in the pain funnel if you uncover L3 on the first question.
Mm.
And sometimes you'll have a very chatty person and you ask, well, where do you see yourself in the next 18 months? And they will just, you can stop there because you now got L3. But what happens is if you don't understand what you're trying to get, you go through these questions and ultimately you might frustrate the prospect because they've already given this information, or you waste your time and stuff like that. Instead, asking these questions, but knowing what you're listening for is really, really important. And then from there, we then determine if it's right to move forward with a presentation. And in the presentation, we then tie the features to what we discovered. So there's no point in showing somebody a feature if it doesn't solve their problem. So I don't believe in the harbor tour demo. I've seen demonstrations being 5 to 10 minutes in length because all they need to see is, could you solve my problem? And could you solve it right
Yeah.
now? And then I've seen others obviously being a lot longer. But what I don't want is the same demonstration every single time.
Love that. Great tips there from Wes Alkin. He's the head of sales at Dex. And we're talking about pain and how we use this in a software sale. I was thinking a couple of questions here. The first one is I love what you said. Sometimes you get that person and there's nothing better in sales when you go, tell me where, we want this to be in 18 months. And they go, 18 months? I can't think about 18 days from now. Like, I don't know if we're going to make the next payroll. I'm in
Yeah.
pain. And they're right on it. You're like, okay, I guess we're moving forward, right? And we can move as fast as we want. Other times it's slower though. So I wanted to ask you about pain with multiple decision makers, or if there's a
Mm.
buying team and all of a sudden we got different people to worry about. Do your sellers have to deal with that? And do you have any advice for us?
Yeah. So early in the discovery, you've got to, once you get the information around kind of, you've uncovered the pain, then you've got to kind of get into who else needs to be involved in these types of decisions. Again, that would have been mentioned in the upfront contract at the beginning, is like, usually when we're working with groups like you, here's what we see and so on. So we're quite prescriptive with that. And from there, depending on if we've done our research before and we recognize that there are other buyers that need to be in or other decision makers need to be included, then we will include an upfront contract. And then when we get them on the phone and we're talking to them, we do our upfront contract, a new one with that individual or that group of individuals. But we also then go into what we uncovered previously, validate it, trust and validate. It's a good phrase I learned from a few Sandler trainers. But from there, we then go into a bit more discovery with the senior individuals. And we just say, look, from your perspective in the organization, can you just share with me a few more things? Because they will have a different viewpoint. So as you're going through in a deeper sales cycle with many, many, many buyers and so on, and I've sold to a number of companies in the top 20 in North America and so on. Look, it's like decision by committee, and it is something that can be quite extensive. And if you take only your first discovery and you try and apply to the last person, you'll come up short. So you've always got to be discovering. So that's kind of a little mantra, always be discovering. Like as a doctor, we've got to get to the root cause. And maybe we come across something that's a bit more complex. Maybe we come across something that might be hereditary or something like that. So let's find out where this comes from and let's solve for the problem.
Great stuff. And I've noticed you've thrown out a lot of examples of the questions you already use. So as we move to the technique bucket here, I do want to ask you, let's start with the technique of the pain and some of the scripts you've already gone through here. And if you haven't noticed, Wes has done Sandler for about 10 years now. So I feel like you could just be teaching the lesson at this point. But when technique comes to mind for your salespeople, what are you thinking about as far as like pain discovery and aligning these, and anything we haven't mentioned maybe on techniques, tools, or you got a lot of really great questions there.
Well, one of the areas is I want seller to recognize they are the doctor, they are the expert in the room of the evaluation. One of the things is when you're selling to an industry, you're going to be faced with industry experts. So you'll be faced with selling in our space, you'll be faced with a 20-year accounting veteran. It's got all the designations. They know their world inside out. And a seller could be intimidated by that, or they could say, you know what, that's true, but I've done 300, 400 evaluations. I'm an expert of helping people solve their problems. And that's the mentality that they really have to carry forth in there. When it comes to it, I want them to maintain and be their authentic self. So this is really important, especially when it comes to understanding the pain funnel and the way it works, because you don't want to read off a script. You want to follow the pain funnel, but you want to know what you're trying to extract from it. So if somebody tells you, oh, this has been going 18 months or 24 months, there's no point in saying, well, how long has this been going on for? They just answer that. So you need to know why you're asking your questions. You want to ask them in your simple phrase. There are a couple of little hacks I have. So when we get into a call, to move from L1 to L2, we can go through, and once they've summarized kind of their superficial problems, we can then say, how do you think that's impacting your business? And that can now start transitioning the conversation into the L2 category. And then to move to L3, how does that make you feel? How does this problem make you feel? And again, it comes from a place of authenticity. You never walk into a doctor and feel like you're being sold to. And in B2B sales, that should be the case. You never should feel like you should be sold to. You should be feeling like I'm working with somebody who knows how to help me.
I think that's such a critical aspect that I want to ask you to put your manager hat back on when you're working with a team of salespeople. I feel like one of the biggest challenges when you learn this pain funnel is that people want to say them all, or they're reading them off a script and it sounds like a robot. You're not doing it with empathy, or they feel like they have to answer all of them in that order and they don't leave room for reverses and nurturing tones and, listening, or even space for that person to go off and answer. So, in your perspective, how many reps does it take? Where do you start? How do you get people to memorize the pain funnel questions? That's a great play. Or cheat and put them on your monitor, right? So that you don't.
Nailed it. Cheat and put it on your
Yeah.
monitor. So obviously we practice, but if you're doing remote sales, like like the world we're living in for software and so on, and you're doing that, cheat. Have the questions in front of you. But know what you're trying to hear. And that's the essential part. Know what you're trying to hear, because otherwise you're going to run down the rabbit hole. You're going to get to an L3 and find out you got gain in the future, and then you're going to wonder why your deal is taking a lot longer than you expected. And on the other side, you won't be in a conversation. And that's really
Yeah.
important here. You want to be in a conversation. So I try and get them to visualize carefully. I try and get them to visualize like times they've interacted with doctors, and I try and get them to visualize what it was like to sit down across from the doctor. Did they feel like they were being sold medicine, or did they feel like they were being prescribed something that would make them healthier and better? And that's the environment I want to create, but it's not a one and done. It comes from, first of all, we have the Sandler training on it. Then we have a discussion about it. We keep it in our dialogue, in our communication, our conversations, but then we reinforce it in our way we forecast, and we reinforce it in the coaching moments when it comes to the videos. Just watching the video recordings, it's amazing what you will see and hear. And the aha moments happen when it's them.
Any idea? You said the penny drops for everybody at different times. Have you seen an average, or how long it takes? Should we be giving people, 90 days to figure it out, 9 years to figure it out? How do you know when a salesperson gets it and when they don't?
You see it. You hear it. So that's when you see it and hear it.
Or how about when do you know that they're going to get it? I feel like sales managers struggle with that a long time. It's like,
Yes.
do I stick with this person? And if it takes 18 months to figure it out, or we got a really long sales cycle, I might have to keep this person for a year or two to find out if they get it or not. Or I'm moving along, he doesn't get it, I'm going to go hire somebody that gets it on day one.
There's two parts to that. One, it comes down to drive. Assuming the person has drive, they will eventually get it. And basically, it goes back to the cookbook. And I've had individuals who don't have goals written down. I've had individuals who don't even know how to create goal lists. So I take them through a goal setting exercise that I learned as an athlete to how to do and stuff like that to help create goals with them. So it becomes their goals. And basically, it's a 3-part exercise where I have them create a list of 50 things that they want to do, just 50 things randomly. And I talk through it and we go back and forth and at least 50. And then we start categorizing them by groups. And then from there, we come out the other end and we've got now a really good goal list, and now we can make the cookbook work. But if we just go with cookbook through quota, you don't get the same buy-in.
Yeah.
And that was something Chris Kelly really, because I was going through and Chris Kelly helped me arrive at that when it came to it. He was like, Wes, look, you're just working the quota. You need to go back to this. And a lot of the things are things that I then remember from being an athlete. And he was absolutely right. And since then, that helped the light bulb go off for them.
Love that. I do want to talk about your background and your personal experience there. Shout out to Chris Keller, your current trainer in Canada right now, but also you get kind of one more meta level of our discussion here, which is using the pain funnel on your employees. What's in it for them? Do they have pain in the present? They're not hitting their quota. Do they have a gain in the future they want to go towards? Is there something right now that can be an instant reward? They get a praise, they get a deal moving forward, they solve some sort of problem that's in it for them. When you use those questions internally, you find great motivation and movement too.
Absolutely. And they're very receptive to it because they now see the doctor-patient dynamic. They're very receptive to it because it's not like, oh, Wes is just peppering me with questions. It's like, look, you know what the next question is going to be, but you know why I'm trying to do this. I'm trying to help you uncover and so on. I learned this as a coach when I was coaching in the NCAA and stuff like this, but the best time to coach someone is after a loss. They're most receptive. After a tough loss, that's the best time to coach individuals. But absolutely use the pain funnel through when I'm talking with them, sitting down, trying to figure out where the gaps exist that we can help with.
Once again, it's Wes Alkin at Dex, head of sales there. And so I wanted to get to know you a little bit better and ask you right now, just kind of tell us a little bit about your sports background and how you learned about success and failure. But what is your current definition of success?
Ooh, current definition of success. It comes back to the happiness equation, and that is expectations being exceeded. And it's important to understand what everyone's expectation is. So I would say, again, I don't live in some utopian society or anything along those lines, but that is, if you got a team that has good expectations and they exceed them, now you're on the path for success. If you're, you've got, and I've got my expectations, and I'm trying to exceed them as well. That really comes down to it. So this has come more in as I crossed over to becoming 40 and being a dad, is the importance of the journey with the destination in mind, but the importance of the journey is incredibly important. I'll touch on the athletic side of things because it will help to understand kind of where my competitive drive comes from on that end.
Yeah, I can relate to that a lot too. I think the older I get, it is about enjoying the journey and not so much the destinations. You're going to hit a lot of destinations in your life. If you only wait for those, you may or may not be enjoying the time along the way. So what about the flip side of that? Was there a biggest failure or hurdle you had to get over in order to be successful?
Just failing. So the biggest thing is like I fail a lot. A lot. I learned this as an athlete. I learned this in the corporal as an individual contributor and as a leader. And it's just being honest and transparent, saying, hey, look, I'm on this journey as well. I'm trying to get here. But to pinpoint one failure, there's just so many of them. But I fail and I learn. I fail and I learn every single time. And it's just keep going, keep moving forward, and take the lesson. And that's exactly it. And experience, what I've learned as well is experience is underappreciated to a significant degree, because I've worked for the groups who are on their first journey, and I've worked for the groups, the senior leadership that have been on many journeys. Carol Lehman and Christine Tutzel, co-founders of Exonify, another company I worked for. Those two are the best at this, and they taught me a lot. And basically, those two gained experience. When it came to making a decision, it's like, well, we've tried this before, and we've tried this before. Let's do this. As you can see, there's so many of my failures that I'm trying to think, like maybe a deal that where do you want me to go with this, Mike? Like a deal I lost or a leadership?
I think we've talked about the lessons here at all too. I'll let you pick. We'll do 2 last questions and wrap it up. Dan asked, if you wanted to find more information on Sandler sales training, just go to sandler.com, click on find a training location. There's probably one near you, Dan. If not, we also have an enterprise team that deals with people with multiple locations, or there's some online courses and stuff you can get connected to. You can connect with Dan or Wes and I on LinkedIn as well. Just search for Wes Alkin or Mike Montague on LinkedIn. You'll find us here, and I'll be sure to tag them in the comments and everything afterwards as well. Appreciate everybody reaching out here. Wes, for the failure and stuff, either sports, what sport did you play? Was there a loss where you learned a lesson, or a sales call where you blew it and you learned a good sales lesson? I'll let you pick.
So as an athlete, I ended up getting into the top 20 in the world for the 5,000 meter race. I was part of an incredibly successful program at the University of Arkansas. We are the most successful NCAA program in the NCAA. The one coach, John McDonald, had won 43 NCAA team titles. But ultimately, my failures were limitations. My failures were around preparation. And these were painful lessons that cost me significant progress in my sport and stuff of that nature. I never made the Olympics. It still haunts me to this day. That's a reality I have to face. And it's fine. I mean, I got so much more out of the sport than just that, but at the time that was devastating along those lines. So failures came in a number of ways, lots of races, but the biggest one that haunts me is not making the Olympics. Still haunts me to this day.
That's interesting. And it's a time one you can't really circle back, but I'm sure you could, as a coach or something else, find a way to get there someday, right?
Absolutely. And again, I gained a lot of experience along the way, and it opened so many more doors than just making the Olympics. Would have opened a few more doors, but so many other doors that opened for me through the sport and so on. In fact, that's how I stepped into the corporate world, was a person I met in running who became my mentor, Dana Fox. And he taught me everything about sales. His first phrase he ever told me was, "Wes, you're not selling. You're here to help people do successful evaluations."
Love that. Now, last question.
Yep.
Do you have a favorite Sandler concept, rule, quote, anything that jumps out that you want to share with us?
I do. It's get comfortable at being uncomfortable. Get out of that comfort zone, but be comfortable with it. It was something that tied my sport to my sales, because ultimately we're in uncomfortable situations regularly. And when you're asking people authentically and genuinely to open up and share their troubles, their hurdles, their facing, their pains, it's uncomfortable. It really can be, but you're asking them for the right reason. You're asking them to help solve a problem, and that is worth it. It's worth the discomfort. So get comfortable at being uncomfortable.
Love that. Again, Wes Alkin at Dext, DEXT.com. And that's accounting software. So if you're in the accounting space, go check that out. If you want to get connected with Wes or I, go to LinkedIn. We'll put the links in the comments and chat as well. You can connect with us there. And let's see. And I was going to say, I agree there that the running, runners don't run without getting pain or without getting tired. You just feel, figure out how to keep going with it, and you use those lessons, those failures, and that pain to drive you forward. I appreciate you sharing with us today. For more information on Sandler, go to sandler.com. And as always, remember, whatever you are, be a good one. We'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.